So here we go. Welcome, Ross. Thank you for
Hi.
being here. Awesome. So yeah, a little bit about what we are talking about today. So obviously, yeah, there's basically what we're looking at is putting out a few bits of content for kind of not just our clients at OA, but just general for like UK surfers or even like if there's international people reading our blogs, but just trying to kind of create some kind of accessible information for surf progression. So obviously there's a lot of content out there now, especially Instagram content of, just every man and his dog offering nutrition advice, fitness advice, workout routines, surf coaching advice with no kind of semblance of who it's geared towards, what it's geared towards, is it high performance? Is it, just general access and surfing? And a lot of them, it's young, fit guys over in Hawaii, Australia and stuff telling you, eat this, do this, do this. And it's just not accessible for a lot of people. As you know, a lot of the guys we get on surf lessons, especially in the UK, they're like upper age, maybe sat behind a desk 6 days a week. It doesn't happen. So yeah, kind of looking to collate a little bit of information that's kind of geared more towards the average surfer and like things that people can be doing, in an age where it's quite hard to dedicate time to health and fitness unless you're in a very fortunate position, and how people can actually improve their surfing outside of, obviously like getting coaching is the gold standard, but financially, time wise, it's not always possible. So before we get into the nitty gritty, if you just want to kind of introduce yourself a little bit, just so anyone reading knows we've not just found another random person off the street. Like, who are you? What do you do? What's your experience? That kind of thing.
That's right, you can pay me later. So my name's Ross James. I run Surf Academy UK. Prior to COVID, I had another surf fitness business called Ocean Core Fitness. Unfortunately, COVID happened. So chance for a rebrand, but basically I've been a personal trainer since 2012. Got into that after becoming a surf coach in 2011. Originally ASI, I'd done my course out in Bali with Robbie Sherwell and had a great time. Followed that up with Portugal, and then the amount of times I got asked, how do you stay fit for surfing? Again, a lot of people from Europe surfing a couple of times a year, maybe a bit more if they're lucky. I'd come from the same background. I've surfed since 2003, probably got better than rubbish after about 4 years, riding longboards on the south coast of the UK and surfing Croyds mostly, probably every month, no matter what the conditions were, as long as it's above a 7-second wave period. I think we were frothing, so we'd all just bundle in a van. It was not a pleasant experience. Usually about 5 blokes sharing a small van, longboards either on the roof or thrown in as well. Yeah, you done what you had to do to surf. So, but yeah, that's pretty much me. I'm currently upgrading my qualifications. I'm becoming a level 4 strength conditioning coach, just in the case studies section now. And I'm also doing my level 3 and level 4 sports massage therapist. So again, hoping to have a level 3 by the end of this month, which would be pretty cool, just to really help my clients, really give a full range of help and service to them. So yeah, that's pretty much me.
Very cool. Thank you for that introduction. Awesome. So we'll get right into it. So obviously, I imagine through your work over the years, especially like you've worked with a very diverse crowd, from like performance level groms right the way through to kind of, like we say, older surfers maybe getting into surfing later in life, or maybe lifelong surfers that have just hit that age where it's like, damn, I really can't move like I used to. So kind of, obviously, like I said, there's a lot of content out there now in like the age of Instagram. And, if you Google search exercises for surfers, there is like every surf, company in the globe, every individual claiming to be a coach or claiming to be this and that with a million different exercises. And very little and very rarely do they actually kind of say who it's designed for. So kind of in terms of your workouts and exercises, things like specifically for women, specifically for like an aging crowd, would you say there's kind of a need there for people to really think about that when they're looking at kind of progressing their surfing and looking at fitness? Would say my fitness program as a 27-year-old woman that's in pretty good nick, but like, got my health issues, compared to say it was like someone like my dad coming to you, he's in his 50s, he's cycles, but is there a difference there in terms of what people should be looking for?
Yeah, so basically, it just all comes down to biomechanics. So, how well does your body move? What's its limitations? Now, who knows? You might have the same limitations as your dad, or your dad could be an absolute unit. I don't know. I've never met the fella, but and you look at Instagram, there's some pretty solid 50-something-year-old dudes out there now. Probably put me to shame, to be honest. Yeah. So essentially, what you'd be looking for, you can have generic programs. They are out there, and they will do a certain amount. No program is necessarily a bad program, but it could be slow for you. Like your progression for whatever your goal is could be completely different. Not everyone can afford a PT, like you say. Sometimes you do just need to go online and go, right, what can I do? But as you say, it is an absolute minefield. I put out a lot of generic stuff just as free content. I put a free mini series up on YouTube last year, recorded at the car park at the Wave, thanks to Sam. And that was just a handful of easy bodyweight exercises and stretches that you can do that will help. So it was squats, lunges, plank. What else did we do? Jump squats, and like I say, a couple of stretches that will just help keep you a little bit limber, help build that strength. And if you've only got 10 minutes, then you can knock that all together and do just a very quick 10 of each, 5 rounds, job done. But yeah, so you want to look at, if you live a very sedentary lifestyle, let's take the cliche office worker that they're sat in a car or on the train or the bus on the way to work, they're sat at the desk all day at work, and then again commuting home, you could comfortably look at 10 to 12 hours of sat round. And then you're probably at least mentally exhausted by the time you get home, especially if you're in a higher pressure or higher responsible role. What are you going to do? You're probably going to get some food, you're going to sit down and go, oh, what a day. Click. And then there goes the TV. You're sat down again. So you could potentially look at 16 hours out of 24 where you've sat down. If you're a surfer, you are ending your surf career before it's even begun. That is really tight hips. Zero mobility there, really. So what you then need to do is go, I need to work on my hips. Once you've loosened them up, you can start looking at everything else. People see like these surf-specific exercises, you know the ones, there's a resistance band, there's a Swiss ball, and there's someone doing a yoga pose, right? Everywhere. And for years, that's all it was. It was like, oh, you want to get good at surfing? Yeah, yoga. Surf, yoga, Swiss ball. And that was pretty much how it went. And yes, yoga's great, it builds flexibility, but there is a massive difference between flexibility and mobility. As I've said in a few of my podcast episodes, flexibility, you can touch your toes, you can do a full squat. Mobility means you can do that with weight and move around in the movement, in the bottom movement. So if you're in a squat, for example, if you have zero mobility, you might struggle to stand back up. You can get down there, great, easy. Hand, please, can you give us a lift up? Getting up off the couch. Right, so you may be flexible, you sit down on the couch, you can't get back up, you need hands. So mobility is having the strength to do that, or if you are down in a squat position, you can do little side lunges, you can move around, you can walk like a little baby would. Babies have got really good mobility because they haven't learned to be lazy yet. So that's almost the bar, actually. If you're looking at how mobile should I be, look at the baby. Look at it move around. Like, yeah, babies, animals, they've got these really high levels of mobility. It's great. So having some kind of strength training there will help. At the same time, here's more confusion. Don't start doing 5 sets of 10 on bicep curls and doing what you see on Instagram from the ripped dudes that clearly bodybuild and don't surf because they're training for bodybuilding. You need to train for what your goal is. So yeah, and that again, that's where a bespoke program will come in useful. And you can get that. There's obviously myself, you got guys like Chris Mills. We all will have a generic budget program, which will be great and it will help build up general strength. But at some point, especially if you've got a trip coming up, you're going to want something a little bit more bespoke. At the end of the day, people go, oh, yeah, but that's really expensive. Yes, but if you're about to drop 2,500, £3,000 on a 10-day boat trip to the Maldives, what's 80 quid, 150 quid over the course of a few months that's going to get you in the best surfing shape of your life, and you're not going to jump off the boat, get your first wave in a solid wipeout and pull a hammy, or you've been sat at said desk for months and months and months, not really doing much training, doing a bit of yoga and a bit of swimming maybe, and suddenly, ping, you've gone and done your hip flexor. That is your trip out the window. That's £2,500 gone. That's washing away with the tide as we speak. So spending money on a program, and you're going to live longer with better mobility in life. It's
Very true.
depends what you want to spend your money on, doesn't it? It's priorities. So yeah, there is a lot of information out there, but definitely getting someone that knows what they're talking about certainly helps. Just make it easier.
Definitely. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that actually, because that's, we're always so, especially as coaches, everything it almost feels like for the most part we look at is that surf progression, but even that injury prevention, it's like there's a few people, I'm sure plenty as well, I've met that perform at a higher level that, even, they're young, they're fit, they're training all the time, they land an air wrong, that's the knee gone, and they're coming back from that for months and months and months. And that's, we're talking young men that spring back fast. So it's one of those really overlooked things. Right? Sometimes you do, don't you? You get people on a lesson and they're, you're looking at them and you're like, is it even safe to take you out in the water right now? In the physical condition you're in, is it almost negligent to put you on this surf lesson? Because like you say, it doesn't have to be a major, movement pattern. It can be something as simple as, if you're going to pop up, that you say you've been sat down for 16 hours a day and you land wrong, at a certain point, like you said, like something springs, like tendons, ligaments and stuff, suddenly that's not just your surf, that's out the window, but also potentially, like you're coming back from that for a long, long time, like there's quite a few guys that I know that, they've been battling injuries for, years now, just niggling injuries that just haven't gone away. And I think it's so people really do. And I almost, and this is like a separate chat, I almost blame things like wave pools for it. It's amazing how accessible it's made surfing, but I think it's created this idea and people think surfing is no longer an extreme sport. It's an everyman sport, which it is in its essence, but it is still a very physically demanding sport. So when people are coming and, they've got these mad expectations of, I've never surfed before, I don't do any other exercise, but I want to get to my feet on a surfboard today. And you can see the frustration in them as that hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on where you are, rolls on and it's not happening. And it's like, how do you explain to someone, this is a wider issue? It's not that you're bad at surfing. You've just learned how to do this sport. The wider issue is this is an extreme sport that people dedicate their entire lives to, getting at the highest level. And you think you're going to come in and just nail the fundamentals in a day when you haven't moved since you were, like you say, probably a baby in the right
Yeah.
way. So it's, that investment in, like you say, it's wider than surfing. It's that whole wellness that people just seem to not think is necessary anymore. And it's so, it's such an interesting kind of wider aspect of the sport that like I say, it's an extreme sport and people don't almost treat it like it is anymore. And I guess that's kind of, like you say, it's where you want to invest your money in. I think it can be quite tricky for people to justify, but it's my hobby, I shouldn't be, taking it that seriously. But it's a pretty serious sport. It's a physically demanding sport.
That's it. And you even looking like changing the mindset of, I'm not investing in surfing, I'm investing in me. Because we've got one body. Yes, things are great. We've seen how if you lose a limb, how you can adapt. I mean, look at Zoe and the guys, like they're absolutely killing it. And I've surfed for 20 years, and some of them have gone through this massive traumatic life experience and lost a limb or a couple of limbs, and they're making me look like a complete beginner. I'm like, wow, I need to step my game up. But even down to just enjoying being able to move better, pain free for longer in your life. Like, not only will increasing your fitness levels and your strength, mobility, everything help per session, you can surf for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours or multiple sessions a day and almost keep up with the Groms and whatever. instead of going, I'm 55, I'm a bit old for this shit, I'm 70 and I'm still surfing. It may be a longboard, it may be a mid-length, and you may not be charging triple overhead pipeline anymore. But if Saunton Sands is 4 to 6 foot and you've got the right equipment, you can still paddle out, you can still catch a wave. You don't have to be doing massive blowtails and 360s to enjoy it. You can just be trimming and cruising and having a great time and go, well, it beats playing chess in a retirement home. So why not put that money into your body? And it will save you from sitting there in a chair going, I remember back in the day. Like, what if I had gone to the gym a little bit more? What if I had put the effort into looking after myself? Where could I be? Instead of that, you're too busy out paddling a 25-year-old because you're a 65-year-old tank and you're having a great time. Especially if you're a 65-year-old woman kicking the butt of a 25-year-old lad and going, yeah, sorry, mate, I've got a lifetime's worth of experience here. Yeah, you enjoy scratching around.
Very true.
So, yeah, so there's plenty of it. I mean, going back to the like performance injuries, I went out at Harlin once a few years back. It's absolutely maxing, and it was too big for me to take a surfboard. Like it was breaking way too fast. So me and some of the guys grabbed bodyboards and we went out. And I remember there's a little right that breaks just in front of a rock at Harlin, and it gets quite wedgy and barrely. It's really good fun, scary but fun. And I remember taking off. This bodyboard was like a slab of concrete. There was zero flex in it. And I took off, I dropped, and my heels come over the back of my head, clipped my ears as I landed, and I just felt my spine go kadunk the wrong way. I was like, needless to say, I didn't bomb down the line. I took an absolute hiding, and for a minute it was like, can I feel my toes? I'm pretty sure I just snapped my spine. Fine. And Dan and the guys just were absolutely in hysterics watching. But about 10 minutes later, when I finally made it back out the back, because I was now getting washed around some rocks. But had I not had a good level of flexibility and mobility, my body contorting like a gymnast doing a scorpion and more could have ended very, very badly. So although I'm probably not quite that flexible now at 40 years old, I can use that as a benchmark to go, right, I'm going to get myself back to that point. So you don't even have to be that good a surfer to sustain an injury in surfing. Wipeouts can really do a number on you just through not having that flexibility and mobility.
So yeah, in terms of, because obviously, like you say, you mentioned a little earlier, what the exercises are that people are doing really makes a difference, right? Like, when people think going to the gym, they're thinking weightlifting, and obviously there's definitely a place for that in surfing. If you're looking at, especially as you're starting to perform a bit more, you need that explosive energy, especially through like, your legs, say you're trying to really grind out those bottom turns, no muscle, no momentum to go, but kind of for that more beginner improver level, things like your paddle fitness, your pop-up mobility, are there, obviously we mentioned yoga, but again, there's almost like a line, isn't there? I sometimes feel like if people get too into the flexibility side, that's also, if you're too flexible, like as someone who's hypermobile, I know 90% of my surf fitness journey before now has been trying to contain my mobility and not have things like my back foot pointing the wrong way, and not dislocate on my pads. It's almost the other end of the spectrum. But in terms of kind of, we mentioned, bespoke plan is the gold standard, but in general sense, say someone's coming to you on a beginner lesson and, or an improver maybe, and they're struggling to catch waves out back, when people think paddle fitness, but they always come to me and say, should I be doing push-ups? And it's like, in what, that is a good generic exercise, but that and that, not the same movement pattern. So are there, like anything specific that you would say is like a good general all-rounder for those fundamental skills, things like your pop-up mobility and paddle fitness?
Yeah, so in terms of the paddling, then if your gym has access to a ski erg for the conditioning side of things, they're absolutely brilliant. You don't have to be going single arm. You can do the double arm and pretend to be a skier. You're still activating your lat muscles. You're still getting that same movement And then you can work out what your your timings, your intervals, and everything else, what energy systems you're going to be using. So press ups are a brilliant exercise. They are a good staple. And you can make this a little bit more sport specific by bringing your arms in. So when you do it, lay down kind of in a pop-up position. You don't want to bring your hands right back underneath your rib cage, like below your chest, which is where they would be on a board. You can just bring your hands underneath your shoulders, so it'd be what's classed as a narrow press up, and you can do it that way. Another one that I've just redone a program for someone, and this has made its way in for the third round. So he's now on month 6 to 9, is dumbbell floor press. So you lay down on the floor, you grab a set of dumbbells or kettlebells, whatever you got, and you extend up from there. Because you're not, so if you're hypermobiling your shoulders, for example, you're not going right the way back, which I am. So if I do a barbell bench, dumbbell bench, my shoulders will almost drop behind the bench. I've always been hypermobile in my shoulders. I've swam since I was about 5 years old. That could be something to do with it. I also love a good chest stretch. So whereas the dumbbell floor press, you can lay down there on the floor, and I'm against the wall now anyway, so that helps, but just extend up. So you just bring it back down, let your triceps and your elbows just touch the floor, and press back up. Really, really good exercise, because when you're on the surfboard, you're not there behind, you're not coming all the way back here, you're there. So you're in quite a neutral starting position. So that is probably a very, what class as a relatable exercise that will help build that strength in the chest. One big thing I'd probably mention, most exercises that will work a muscle group will benefit your surfing. So again, pull-ups, really good for your lats. The lat pull down, if you can't do pull-ups, you don't have access to bands or an assisted pull-up machine, the lat pull down is another great exercise. You don't necessarily have to go wide. You can bring it narrow. You can change the piece of equipment. So a little close grip bar is a good one. Neutral grip. Bring it into your chest. Don't pull it down. You want to do it so that you can feel your lats tense, and then they're not really going any further. So if you notice here, it's just across my chest. So my nipple line's about there where the designer's on the hoodie. I'm bringing it down to there. It's a wide grip. I'm bringing it to there. So again, just above the shoulder and collarbone. That's as far down as you need to do it. That's going to engage all your lats. That's still going to help build the strength for the paddling. Swimming will obviously be a great one. Now, going into a little bit more detail, I'm not going to start throwing too many big words because it scares people and me. I feel like I know what I'm talking about then. Another thing, so when we had that era of Swiss balls, resistance bands, and a lot of downward dog, everyone was doing reps upon reps upon reps, because they look at a paddle out, for example, and go, I've got to paddle maybe 20 minutes if it's a really messy day. Yes and no. This is where sets and reps comes in, and different types of strength and endurance training. It's not just this builds strength, this builds endurance, this builds muscle size, hypertrophy, and this builds power. You got strength endurance, you got strength power, you got power endurance, and so forth. So one thing to remember is if you're paddling out on an average UK beach break, you're probably looking at an 8-9 second wave period, 3 to 4 foot swell. That may not end up being what's on the beach, we all know that. And if it's on shore and it's busy, you're darting around, you're not paddling for 20 minutes solid. You are paddle, 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 duck, dive, or turtle roll. Paddle, 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 same, or paddle, 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 duck, dive, way too big, messed up, my board's gone, pull your board back, dive under, right, now I'm back on my board, a few more paddles. Your body is starting, so that's not just endurance. You're using your phosphate creatine system, which you're now looking almost, just to make it relatively simple, at things like sprint training. Your Usain Bolt isn't going to train the same as Mo Farah, okay? Yes, they are running, but they're using different energy systems. Mo Farah is going to run for 16 days, and Usain Bolt is going to try and not run for more than 10 seconds, right? Massive difference, 2-3 hours maybe, compared to 10 seconds, say. You need to be able to get power paddling for maybe 10 seconds until that next wave comes that you've got to duck dive or avert the surfer on the wave, for example. So if you're sticking to the right etiquette, you'll be paddling towards the white water. If you're not, start. And then, but you're going to have to do that multiple times. So instead of going, I'm doing 3 sets of 10 minutes of resistance band pull downs or paddling, or you need to go, okay, I might need to be doing 10 to 15 sets of 10 seconds. So take the ski erg, for example. You could turn this into a bit of a Metcon style workout. So for those that know what CrossFit is, Metcons are brilliant. You could do 5 ski erg, 5 calorie ski erg, which is only going to be a matter of seconds. Probably 10 to 12. It doesn't have to be exact numbers, but say a 10 cal row ski erg mixed with 5 press ups, for example. Okay, that's going to relatively compare to a paddle out, but keeping technique and sensible training in the gym. So, but you could do that you could set it for time. You could do 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, whatever, work your way up. Or you could say do 10 rounds, which they'll be pretty quick rounds. It's only going to be over in 2 or 3 minutes, because 10 calories, you might be looking at, say, 15 seconds. Then you're doing 5 press ups. Again, 10 to 15 seconds. So 5 rounds might only be 2.5 minutes. But if that's at the end of a workout, that could be a really good finisher and a little bit surf specific. Or if you're in a bit of a rush that day, do a warm up, get on a cross trainer, just get everything moving. Really good warm up equipment, by the way, and then smash out a few rounds of that. So you've still got your surf specific training, but you are building some strength. You are working your body in the right way. You could completely just stop. You could do 10 cal, 15 cal, and then give yourself a 10-second rest and go, okay, cool, maybe throw in a couple of squats, to the vest, any of that stuff. Figuring out how it's actually going to benefit you. Like I said, a lot of people will go reps, 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 and do all the reps, and then they start paddling out, and after 2 minutes or 2 sets of waves coming through, like, I'm gassed. But I've been training 4 times a week for 3 months. Why am I not there? It's like, it's not the most beneficial training you could have done. But I can pretty much guarantee you that if you start doing things like that and mixing it up, you're going to see a huge, huge difference. I mean, my client Reese, I'm not going to lie, because I've been a bit ill over winter and everything else, and I haven't surfed for 3 months. He absolutely annihilated me paddling, because he's been working in construction, training 3 or 4 times a week, climbing once or twice a week, and is just riddled with ADHD and won't sit still. He also runs lifeguard courses, so he is super fit anyway. So if anyone does need a refresher, look up Reese John, give me a shout, I'll put you in touch. So his level of fitness is super high anyway, and we went out to Morocco and he was just boom, 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 like a pond skipper across the water, just going for absolutely everything, and had an epic time whilst I was sat there with heat stroke taking pictures. But yeah,
Bittersweet, bittersweet.
I know, right? I'm not upset at all, but hey ho, win some, lose some. But yeah, so looking into energy systems is almost, I'm going to say it's a hack. It's a surf fitness hack. That, yeah, definitely have a look into that. If anyone has got any questions, obviously fire away. More than happy to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because, like I say, I think people almost get scared of surf fitness, because it's like, oh, I'm only a casual surfer, but in order to enjoy, even if you're not looking to compete, if you're just looking to enjoy and make the most of your sessions, like you say, even just being able to get out back, like 90% of the time, you probably experienced it a million times over, but since kind of stepping up my own coaching and starting to move into that more improved intermediate level, the amount of people I get that come to me and they want, I want to work on catching waves out back. And we do this beautiful program. We're talking all of this technique for their pop up and their stance, and maybe we're even talking about speed gen. And then we end up stuck in the whitewater because they couldn't get out back in the first place. And, it's that kind of progression that people will really overlook the fundamental skills. Things like, just being able to paddle out to the lineup, even, being able to line a board correctly. It's trying to explain to a relatively fit young man the other day who couldn't for life him figure out why he couldn't balance on his surfboard and why he just couldn't hold himself up when he was doing the pop-up and why he kept falling off. And it was literally just that lack of, I was like, what do you work out, what do you do? And he was like, well, I do my chest, I do my arms. Do you work on your core at all? Because, this is, your core never stops working in surfing, technically, if you're doing it right. You never really want to relax core. And, that was like a mind blower for him that he had to, have some core stability. It wasn't just all, oh, well, I've got these big buff shoulders and big buff arms and I can throw my weight around. Boom, I'm up on my feet. Yeah, but how are you staying there? It's all of these pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. And even for the average surfer, not looking to compete, like you say, to enjoy those sessions and to be able to surf for longer, it is like a package deal. And it also, it's beneficial for the wider, your wider life. Like I think the guy that runs the gym here, Gareth, amazing guy, tons of experience, has worked with Elliot Williams, who, represent New Zealand at the Olympics. He's constantly saying, it's the guy and gal with the biggest calf muscles, they're living the longest. It's great for your surfing, but also like your cardiovascular system, it's like you say, it's investment in your life as well as your surfing. So yeah, definitely. On that note, on the other side of it, so obviously we've kind of discussed, your exercises and that kind of thing. Bit more nitty gritty, your motor neuron control, if you will. Bit of an interesting one, but kind of found it the other day. Is it something you've experienced, kind of take, for example, people's, and I do almost blame technology for this. It feels like people are losing that connection between brain and body. You're telling someone to compress and there's like a disconnect in that the knees just aren't bending. It's like the brain has no concept of what compression is, or say even at that high level, like, and I do it myself, I'm guilty of it, I'll be telling myself in my head, okay, on this cutback, we're going to rotate, we're going to match our chest or eyes, we're going to look back at the pocket. And there's no response, we're knocking, but there's nobody home. And, are there exercises that, people can do to, build that connection and build that, kind of real, ability to control your body in that moment?
Yeah. So, and a lot of people are probably going to go, yeah, right, now you're talking a load of BS. But, and again, this comes down to energy systems and the right kind of training and knowing what you're talking about. Olympic weightlifting. Now, yes, I get it. You'll see the most jacked competitors from Asia are competing in this and absolutely wipe the floor with probably 95% of the planet. Close behind are Russians, anything to do with training, and Russians just watch and learn. But exercise like Olympic weightlifting, kettlebells, and dare I say it, functional fitness like CrossFit, high rocks, it's you and your body having to work together. You don't have a choice. If you're not putting that weight where it needs to go in the most efficient way possible, you can injure yourself. Like, obviously, CrossFit got a really, really bad rep when it first come out in around the noughties, I think. When you look at how far that's come in the last 15 to 20 years, it absolutely annihilated the fitness industry like you wouldn't believe. And now every, even minor town's probably got 2 to 3 boxes. If it hasn't, the local privately owned gyms look like a box. There isn't a leg press or a bicep curl machine in there. It's all rigs, rings, and a lot of AstroTurf. So that just goes to show how breaking away from this sort of bodybuilding style training, isolation exercises like curls, tricep extensions, it's a chest press. They all have their place, and you can utilize each and every single one of them exercises to help enhance your surfing. For example, people go, I'm not going to do bicep curls because I'm going to get bulky and I don't want massive arms. It's going to get in the way. No, but you want to be able to do a pull-up. In order to do a pull-up, you need to have biceps. Get them in there. Don't do a 100-rep workout for biceps that you saw on Muscle magazine. Just look at it properly and go, right, I need to build strength, not size. So you're going to bring your reps down, you're going to increase the weight. If you can find a local weightlifting club and explain what your goal is, I want to perform better as a surfer. I need to be able to increase my core strength. I need to increase my trunk stability and general power output. I'm not interested in breaking any strength records. They will go, okay, cool, and they will put you on the right program. A bit of an F1, women completely, this isn't going to happen for you unless you're injecting. Guys, if you are training, unless you're smashing 4,000 to 5,000 calories a day easy, you're not going to get massive and bulky. So sorry to burst your bubble, not going to happen. So stop thinking it is. It's going to take you a long time. That absolute unit in the gym has either been training for 30 years or has got some help, some synthetic help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're not going to get that bulky. I'm quite a bulky dude. I think I'm about 46-inch chest and I'm only 5'7", so I'm short and as wide as I am tall, which isn't very tall. But I'm not trying to put on a massive load of size. I'm actually consistently trying to maintain around 2,500 to 3,000 calories. I train regular. I do Olympic weightlifting 2 to 3 times a week. Relatively active for the most part, especially in the summer. And I don't have Tom Hardy traps. Look, they're not sticking through the hoodie, so it's not going to happen. So gone slightly off topic there, but with the Olympic weightlifting, what you're doing, you're building amazing strength. You are building power and explosivity. So plyometrics, ballistics, whatever you want to call it. When you do what's called a clean, so you bring the bar above your knees, you have to get that bar from there either up to your chest or above your head, depending on what movement you're doing. So take the snatch, for example, the one where you see people's elbows go the wrong way, still scares me. That, you're bringing it from the floor, or if you're doing a power snatch, it's coming straight up. You're throwing a bar up. Camera's not wide enough, but you're getting it up there. So that is a lot of movement in your lats, in your hips. You are putting whatever weight right up there above your head. Brings me on. So you've got the power to bring that bar from the floor up there in the most linear position possible. If you want a funny video, there is one on my Instagram somewhere where I bring that bar as close as I can and it goes through my nose. And Lizzie, the coach, at the end, you can just hear her go, "Is that your nose?" Yes. Yes, it was. That was about 40 kilo go bang straight through very fast, which I'm quite glad about because it was over quickly. That will help build that power in your upper back, in your lats, which is what you need for your sprint paddling. Which one of the advantages we're saying as well for training would actually be how busy is your local break. You don't have to be a pro, you don't have to be a full-blown athlete, but if everyone around you, take Bournemouth for example, I'm living South Coast. Bournemouth is technically my closest one. It's where I learned to surf. I'm not surfing there much because it's absolutely absurd how many people are out in the water, even when it's crap. So if I'm going to go down there, I'm taking the biggest board possible and I'm going to make sure that I have been doing plenty of cardio, lots of paddle training, because there's going to be, God forgive us if it's actually shoulder high and clean, you'll probably have 60, 70, 80 people on one side of the pier with maybe a split peak opportunity, maybe. Insane. So I've quit surfing for a minute. I'll probably be up at a wave at some point to get my dose, but I'm in the gym, I'll be in the pool and so forth. But yeah, so back to the weightlifting, you're building up that power, that speed, that ballistic energy that you need, that power output. So you can be a heavier surfer. I'm 98 kilo. I'm not light whatsoever, but I've got that power behind me that it doesn't really matter. I can move my body where it needs to go as pretty much as quick as it needs to be. That's all the true definition of core strength. So this is probably something that needs to be touched on, and it's outside of motor neurons. But core strength isn't plank, crunches, Spider-Mans, all that jazz. It's not doing a military style workout. That will build strength in your abs. You need it. But core strength is being able to use your trunk, so here down to your legs basically. If you took all your limbs off and your head, and you're left with that little midsection of your torso, that is where your core is. Good example, a friend and I were training probably 2014, 2015, and all we were doing, dumbbell overhead press. Nice simple exercise, nothing too heavy. I think my friend was trying to push 18s, I was on 14s. My back, solid. My mate's back, I can't even bend it that much. And he's like, no, my core strength's really good. I can do 200 sit-ups. I'm like, cool, I do about 15 and I hate them. But drop your weight. And he didn't like that. He was a guy in a gym, in a weights room, testosterone flying, lift lighter. That's not what you want to hear. And so he did. And I think he dropped say, which as hard as it was for him mentally, ego-wise, his back went from being like that to there. So suddenly that's actually beneficial. He had his nice neutral spine, so slight curvature in your lumbar, and was performing the exercise how it's supposed to be performed. There was no risk to his erector spinae, there was no any contortion, none of that. Strong body, neutral spine, nice, smooth, easy movement. So overhead press, overhead squats, anything overhead, clues in the name, will help you build a nice, strong, stable core. Plank can be a good exercise if it's done right as well, but make sure you are doing it right. Sometimes people's backs like that, sometimes the bum's up in the head and downward dog. Just, get a mirror or get a coach, either one. Film yourself, make sure you're doing it right. You'll be fine. But all of that, so again, overhead movements comes back to the motor neurons and having that connection, that mind-body connection, making sure that everything is working how it's supposed to. So if you can, I would highly recommend get down a weightlifting club, learn how to do clean and jerk, press, snatch, all of that. Front squats are brilliant because they load your quads. And if you look at the movement pattern for a bottom turn, which is the most important maneuver you're going to do on a wave because it sets up everything. If you can't bottom turn, take up another sport. Take up bodyboarding. You need to have a solid bottom turn. You look at anyone, and I was watching this thing recently with Pat Kadauskas, and he was still to this day watching the same 90s VHS video of Tom Curran and how Tom done a bottom turn. So yeah, he was a regular foot. His front arm was down towards his front foot. He was compressed, not leaning, compressed enough that his backhand, his right hand, was down towards the water. But as he started turning, this back arm is dropping back, which you may think is counterintuitive. However, you're actually winding up so that you're becoming this ball, this spring, ready to unleash. So as you come up to the top of the wave, bang, that comes round. Core strength, front squats, explosive power, all of that is you can get all of that from weightlifting. And like I say, you don't have to be the next power lifter. You don't have to look like a 2015 Eddie Hall. You can be as strong, powerful, and explosive as any other athlete. You just need to be able to have that power to weight, strength to weight ratio. That's how it will work. Hope that.
Interesting. Yeah, that was very good. Hopefully, people aren't gonna have their minds blown too much by this. But again, it's like we say, it's when people think surf fitness, they overlook that. Like you say, if you want a good connection between brain and body, you need muscles. You need things for the body to use to make those connections. I had it. I'll never forget it. It was the first time Jazz ever saw. Obviously, Jazz is an osteopath. First time he ever saw me surf the wave, I was coming back from a fair bit of illness by the time I got to Bristol, and I couldn't stand up. I didn't have. You could actually at one point, not now because I've been hitting the gym, but at one point, if you pushed on the top of my thigh, you could feel the bone. There was no muscle there because I'm 5'9". I've always been a bit lanky, and I think. And this is a point I'm going to get into in a minute. It's funny you say, that fear of being bulky, especially for female athletes. There's a big fear of, oh, well, I can't hit the gym. I don't want to be bulky. And especially for someone my height, I'm already towering above the next girl in the lineup. If I then start to go out this way, it's everything in society. You look at any of the major, getting better now, but especially like when I was first learning to surf, like Roxy, all the Roxy, athletes, there were, skinny bonds, curves in the right places, and that's just not what your top level athletes look like. So, there's a lot of trying to convince people a fit and healthy and high performance body is not your magazine body. They're not the same thing. They're two different disciplines almost, If you want to look like a model, that's cool, but that's a job. There's a reason they get paid so much. They are paid to starve themselves. They are paid to create a product out of their bodies. You're not going to find, look at any of the top female athletes, Chris Amur. Amazing, amazing, beautiful woman. She's definitely not a small girl. You know what I mean? She's not big by any sense. She's not overweight, but she's not, she's not trying to be the smallest version of herself as possible. And again, it's, gets a bit more kind of into the medical side of things, but if you're not taking care of yourself from nutrition or, like you say, building those muscles, building that connection between brain and body, how are you going to paddle out in the ocean and, even just take a wave on the head, if your body is just fighting for life. And that kind of brings me on to the next point. So obviously we've talked a fair bit about the fitness, the exercise, nutrition. Nobody ever wants to talk about it. No one ever wants, when you're doing coaching with people, I know for my level 2, I've got a whole beautiful laid out plan of, meal tracking and, like, let's look at how we're feeling our serves. Nobody ever wants to fill out. Nobody wants to touch nutrition. And again, that's another one that's fallen victim to, influencers. And, it's such a minefield, like you see people, eat like a carnivore diet, this is what surfers should be eating to fuel, keto, do this, do that. There's so much out there, possibly even more than fitness. And, for surfing, it's, if at my prime when I was living in Brazil, I could do a 7-hour day in the water and just jump out for a coconut. But, at that time, I was a much younger, much more energetic version of myself. You see the Groms out there now, they're out there for hours and hours. They're throwing airs. They're built like twigs. What are they eating? Pizza, chocolate, energy drinks. But they can get away with it. For your average surfer, say, if we have that diet, the only place I'm going is the emergency room. I'm not throwing any kind of spray. I'm going to my GP and I'm taking out a life insurance policy. So in terms of nutrition, that fuel, what, say someone's coming to you, a client, you've looked at the fitness element, nutrition wise, where do people start with nutrition for surfing?
So I think just in general, it's quite late actually. Through COVID, like a lot of people, I took a very, very serious look at myself. Now, I am, if you want to say, like, genetically predisposed to putting weight on a little bit easier. And again, being a whopping 5'7", it shows very, very quickly if I put on weight. I done one of these DNA tests, which also include a food intolerance. I believe it was with Check My Health. That's not 100% accurate. I can't remember. It's 5 years ago and a lot's happened since COVID. But it had like this traffic light system. So it had fairly comprehensive list, somewhere between 100 and 200 ingredients that is either neutral, like I say, traffic light, red, green, amber, of how your body reacts to certain things. So, for example, probably 98% of fruit, I'm good. However, apples come up as red, I believe, red or amber, which makes sense. I've never been a massive fan. I've been very picky which apples I enjoy. Classic green Granny Smith, not a chance. I want them softer red apples, whatever they're called. I also would rather a pear cider. or a Perry rather than a classic apple cider. And a lot
True.
of things made sense. Unfortunately, mushrooms are a no-go for me, which is a shame because they are one of the best foods out there. They've got so much going on. At the end of the day, and this isn't a sellout, eat unprocessed food. Like, it really isn't that difficult. If you start there, you're already onto a winner and you're beating probably 80% of any westernized country, the inhabitants. Like, it is so easy to grab a pot noodle, a sandwich, a wrap, which is supposed to be healthy. It is still processed. I love a wrap. Um, and I'll make my own. I'll do some chicken thighs in the air fryer with a bit of piri piri. Take the bones out, then put it in a wrap. Throw a little bit of salad in and whatever. You don't need much else after that. Yes, you can go vegetarian. Yes, you can go vegan if that's what you believe in. Fair play, nothing against it. Just keep your chickpeas away from me. I think they're the driest thing ever. He says coming back from Morocco. But having just easy natural food, look at any Blue Health program ever. You can have bread. You can have certain things, but it is moderation. It is the M word. And if you are going out to expend a lot of energy, whether that's surfing, gym, playing with the kids all day, whatever that happens to be for you, you need to fuel up. And you will then, if your goal is to burn excess fat, you will burn it. Had I actually surfed every day on my trip and not gotten ill through heat stroke, I'd have probably come back comfortably a kilo or two lighter because my weight can fluctuate that much, especially when you're in somewhere like Morocco. Love a tagine, love a good mint tea. I'm probably going to survive off that most of the week. And like freshly grilled fish, there's no trans fats, there's no overly saturated fats, there's omega-3s, there's protein. Don't be afraid of protein either. Again, guys, aim for 100 grams of protein minimum, unless you're absolutely tiny and there's nothing to you. We probably wouldn't need to go too far past 100, 120 grams of protein, although she is just a small built unit and will kick my ass paddling any day of the week. Well, generally in surfing, but even to that extent, so you've got someone that's what's she 5'2" maybe.
Loose
Uh,
5'2".
yeah, with the yellow pages. Sorry, she is an athlete. She is an absolute machine, and she is really built for surfing. Small frame, quite lightweight, with a really strong power output. She will eat healthy. She does eat healthy. I've seen the lunches. But again, if you take myself on the other end of the scale, 98 kilos, still short, but well built, I'm probably going to be aiming for 150 grams of protein a day, comfortably. I used to, after an ACL reconstruction back in 2013, I trained with a pro strongman. And I trained with his trainer. And if I say I was training 8 times a week, I could tell you the routine. It was Monday, Wednesday, Friday, twice a day. So it's around 6 a.m., probably again about 1, 2 p.m. Tuesdays, Thursdays was one session a day. And then I was active most of the weekend. I'm joining with clients sometimes as full-time PT. Some of us guys might throw an extra sort of like bro training session. There'd be a lot of hypertrophy stuff. I'd been laid up for 6 months. I had a lot of pent up energy. I needed to get that out. But I was surfing a lot. I just got a van again. I'd only been surfing. I think I got back in the water after my op on that sort of void between Christmas and New Year's. So as soon as I was able to, I was in the water. I was on a bigger board and just catching waves. So if there was waves at the weekend, I was going to be at the beach. And then had multiple trips to Croydon, Newquay. So there was a lot of energy, and I was eating steak and eggs or steak and nuts for breakfast most days, and then I was having 4 or 5 smaller meals of say 3 sausages or 2, say, lamb burgers with a big pack of the microwave veg, just because I only had a microwave to use at work. I was in that gym 15 hours a day during the week. I had no life. But so I'm having 4 or 5 of those packets of veg a day. Evening meal on days that I had trained would be 150 to 200 grams of carbs. So you're probably looking at a couple of sweet potatoes about the size of your fist each, or a solid bowl of rice. My goal was to drop a load of fat, because I'd been led up after an operation. I think I was probably high 80s in the kilos. I ended up getting back down to 75. I dropped probably 15 to 20% body fat. And I wanted to be able to perform better. I wanted to build some muscle. I got down to about 10.5% body fat, so I was extremely lean. And yeah, I had a pretty solid body at the time, but that needed fueling. I will tell you now, if I'd have lived off a standard diet of whatever, porridge or cornflakes or whatever for breakfast in the morning, porridge over cornflakes, by the way, or a couple of eggs on toast, followed by some kind of meal deal at lunch or whatever they've got at the staff canteen, and then a standard evening meal of some kind of carbs, some kind of meat, maybe a little bit of veg or half a tin of beans or whatever that might look like to you, you're probably putting in about 1,500 to 2,000 calories of poor to average nutrition. Whereas, now a friend of mine, Eddie, showed me this one. If you've got a fairly active day coming up, 4 eggs, handful of cherry tomatoes, like a good 8 or 9 of them, and a good solid clump of spinach. Stick all that in a pan, cook with whatever oil you want. I don't really care, coconut oil or even good extra virgin olive oil, that's fine. Infuse it with some garlic, it's delicious. Then we throw in a bit of paprika, a bit of garlic, a bit of turmeric. Throw some black pepper in with the turmeric because that's got anti-cancer properties. It helps fight it apparently, and it just tastes good. That is a really good breakfast. It takes 4 minutes to do. Now, to add to that, if you've got a full day of surfing coming up, you can boil up some sweet potato as well and throw that in. Not everyone likes carbs first thing in the morning, but to be honest, if I'm going to go surf my local break, there's an app. So I used to live in Newquay. If I'm going to go surf North Fishel, I am 100% having a fully carved up, high fat breakfast. Oh, and throw in an avocado as well. High fat breakfast because I'm going to be fighting against Groms, some of the UK's best surfers, like on any day at North Fishel. Those that know will know. You got Stokes, you got Luke Dillon, you've got maybe one of the Ash brothers. You've got some high level surfers. For those that don't know, Luke Dillon was the best thing to come out of the UK for about a decade and is now the head coach for the England team. Don't paddle against him.
You will lose.
You will lose. And then obviously it's Cornwall, it's Newquay. Like every other chippy, sparky, tradie is really good at surfing. So you've got a tough paddle battle every time you go out. You need to have lots of energy. If you don't have the energy, you're not gonna make it. If you really do want to lose a little bit of weight, my advice would be to track your calories. Get yourself a little book or download something like MyFitnessPal. They're pretty good. Not always 100% accurate, but you can scan everything. So you can literally do it as you shop. You can scan it on your little shopper thing, and then you can go, right, I've got chicken thighs, scan, that's X calories, protein, fats, whatever, everything's on there. You can put in what your goal is. So if you're, I don't know, 100 kilos, you want to lose 10 kilos, you want to do it over 6 months, or whatever, you can go, right, I aim to lose 1 to 3 pounds a week. That's relatively healthy, especially if you are BMI wise obese, morbidly obese. You can drop a lot of weight quite quick. Just expect that to start plateauing. But yeah, if you want to become lighter and be able to get a smaller board, whatever, 1 to 2 pounds a week, track everything, eventually you'll be able to look at a meal and go, that's about 30 to 40 grams of protein. I reckon I've got 100 grams worth of carbs, and there's not much fat in that one. But this morning, for that breakfast, I had an entire avocado. I used coconut oil. That was a high-fat breakfast, low-carb breakfast, so it fueled me up. And if you're really, really desperate to lose a bit quicker, start doing a bit of intermittent fasting. But always seek a medical professional and keep yourself hydrated as well. So if you want to perform better in the water, get yourself some electrolytes as well, especially if you're going away. Don't do what I done, not take your electrolytes. Go to a country that's 25 degrees after spending 3 months in about 2 degrees in the UK. As you can tell by the tan, feel like you're dying, and then watch all your friends go surfing after you just dropped £600 and had about 15 waves max. Yeah, nice one. So yeah, intermittent fasting, have a look at tracking your calories and just cut out the crap food. Forget your fizzy drinks. They're not that good. Don't have energy drinks. It's quite simple. We all know this. Everybody knows what to do. We just refuse to believe it. And we hope that some of this is going to be good. Don't cut your calories out. Use them wisely.
Definitely. Yeah, it's funny. It's I kind of noticed, and that was kind of what fueled the need to create this series, if you will, and have this conversation, because there is so much out there now that, like, I've got a friend back home that, we're all going to a concert this year, and, it's going to be 3 hours standing. So everyone's, trying to get a little bit, want to enjoy it, want to be able to survive 3 hours standing in a sweaty crowd. And it's, meal replacement drinks. Like, yeah, it's got 20 grams of protein. Where is that? What else has 25 grams of protein? 4 eggs. If you're looking at 4 eggs versus a drink that's full of, because, I was vegetarian for a while. Obviously, as you know, van life, trying to keep meat in a van is, unless you have a really good solar setup, it's you pretty much buying it to cook it there and then. It can be quite expensive. So I cut out meat for a while. So I was trying to get my protein in through protein powder. Now, protein powder, I'm not saying is a problem if you get a good one. However, unfortunately, a lot of the vegan ones, if you look at the ingredients compared to your traditional whey protein, there's all sorts of nonsense in there. And, I'm here wondering, why do I constantly, I'm getting every illness that's, going around. Like, I'm constantly feeling tired. And, there's other stuff in the background. Like, I've cut out drinking alcohol since I've been out here in New Zealand. That's made a huge difference because, it's famously quite hard to make it through the lineup when you're busy being hungover. But, that kind of getting your nutrition from the right places, like you say, just eating clean makes such a difference. Because as soon as I cut out, the crazy flavored protein powders and, like your protein bars and, there's all these big claims about, like it's got, all in bright, light colors, like it's got this much protein. Look at this. And it's like, yeah, but you know what else does? Steak. Steak's more delicious. There's no benefit to, fueling yourself with chemical, it's empty calories. But it is interesting, you say on the one side, there is this almost like epidemic of, people, gaining more weight, being overweight, trying to, maintain a healthy lifestyle while, carrying around a lot more body fat than we used to. But then on the flip side of that, something that I've discovered through my own, I had some health problems over the new year. And my aunt is a practice nurse, and we're on the phone talking about it. I'd been to A&E and stuff, and they'd done all these tests and whatnot. And she was like, "How's your weight these days?" And I was like, "I'm about 59, 60 kilograms, depending on the time of day." And there was just silence on the phone, and she was like, "I weigh that." She's 5'4". So, there's almost another side to this where it's like, say, people seeing these Instagram models, like these surf influencers, and these boys, they're all lean as heck, ripped to sin, and all the girls, it's all curves in the right places, standing posing on the beach in like, these teeny tiny bikinis that, if I'm being brutally honest, you'd never wear to surfing because you'd come up naked after a good wipeout, you just wouldn't do it. And there's almost, I have had people come to my lessons and, ask like, how do I improve my surfing? And I say, well, be looking at some muscle, we need to be working out, we need to, you were knackered after 30 minutes, what did you eat for breakfast? You had a coffee. Well, you didn't have breakfast, you're not fueled. And, the response is always, well, oh, but I just gain weight so quick, I can't eat breakfast, I can't eat this, I can't, I couldn't eat what you eat because I just gain weight. And it's, this almost other side of the epidemic where, like you say, we need to fuel ourselves. And, if you look at the top athletes in the world, maybe marathon runners, they're stick thin, but that's because it's a very different kind of exercise. But like you say, your power lifters, like we have a lot of TVs around the gym here, and often they show the CrossFit, like Hydrox, and the CrossFit comps are often on, and the female athletes in there, they're a lot of them maybe have. Well, I mean, I don't know how, like, because they're big. I'm not saying they necessarily have help, but that they're big. They're obviously investing a lot of time and fuel into reaching these, big, bulky. Not saying that surfers want to be that big and bulky, but that not being afraid to fuel your surfs properly, and especially I feel like for female surfers, there's this big fear about fats. Well, we need more body fat percentage than men for our hormone health, because your hormones control everything. So it's that trying to break down those barriers of reminding people there is more to life than being the smallest version of yourself. This is an extreme sport. You're trying to, necessarily professional athletes, but we're athletes at some level, and trying to convince clients to just, break away from that social media mindset and take care of themselves sometimes is one of the hardest parts of coaching.
100%. And again, that's why if you are looking at and improving it in any area, then you need to start investing in yourself. Because you're saying about the higher fat levels for women, and that's true. And going on to the hormones, that's why women tend not to, or they tend to respond to strength and weight training extremely well, because you don't naturally have, other than the rare few, you don't have that level of testosterone that's required for you to build muscle mass. That is how muscle is built. Essentially, you need a certain level of testosterone in your system. If you have them higher levels of estrogen, some guys do it. That's why some guys suffer with, like, basically moobs. You've got that higher excess of fat levels, and it can require surgery in some cases. So a good rule of thumb is, if you want to burn fat, increase your fat intake. Right? Mind blown. Carbs are great, and after some good exercise, I don't just mean taking a dog around the block, unfortunately. If it's that easy, it'd be great. Have some kind of sugar. So the more natural, the better. Carbs require sugars. Sugars are in carbs, all of that. We know that. Our muscles require glucose to work, and to work well. So that's why those that do keto are going to state of ketosis quite often, or for long term. They are the ones that will probably struggle over time with energy. They might not have that endurance, especially when it's something like surfing that's quite an endurance-based sport. Their energy levels are going to drop all of a sudden, because they are just surviving off fats and proteins, which is great if you do want to drop some weight quick. Just be mindful that when you start incorporating carbs, that first day, yes, if there is any vanity in you, you are going to be in the mirror and go, my muscles are popping, I look amazing, because your muscles have just gone and just soaked up all the glucose and gone, yes, thank you very much. A lot of bodybuilders will do it, they'll go low carb and then have a refeed day, and I can guarantee you the phone's out, it's like bang, 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 because the lighting's good and the muscles have just been refueled with carbs, so you've got so much energy. However, if you're surfing and you've got a very, very active day, get some carbs in you, or at least at the end of the day, like I was saying about my old training program, refeed in the evening, get some carbs in you, so that through the night, whilst your body's resting, you're resting, your body's actually recovering, you can refuel, you can get the nutrients wherever they need to go. So yeah, I mean, if you take a look at, say, Sally Fitzgibbons, for example, not going to lie, like crush, absolute legend. Yeah, who hasn't? But I mean, you watch some of the Red Bull footage, and she's gone and trained with high-level Aussie teams, football teams, and rugby and everything else. And she was definitely that kid with way too much sugar as a child, like so much energy. But she's not, this may come across wrong. I don't mean it like that. You know, I don't mean it like that. She's not stick thin with no bum. Like, she is slim. She's petite, pure muscle, like
A
absolute
strong woman.
mini beast. And fitness wise, she'll wipe the floor with so many people because everything is pure muscle. So from an aesthetic or visual point of view, her body has shape, like slightly rounder shoulders, bum comes out, there's shape around her quads. You can see that it's not just stick pole legs. There's girth there, there's muscle. Them joints are protected. Their muscles are good to go. She can go and do hours and hours and hours of competitive surfing and be good to go. Probably wouldn't even need to refuel as much as a lot of us. So, like you say, the old school 90s reef girls, yes, absolutely stunning on paper, but not necessarily athletes. If you're going to work out, exercise, train, and live your life like an athlete, which most of us don't, then you need to train and eat like that. You need to fuel your body. We're an engine. We need fuel. It's as simple as that. But that's where people need to realize, am I an athlete, or am I that average guy or girl that is doing a semi-sedentary job? I've done everything known to man job-wise over the years, trying to go surf as much as possible. Literally working in prisons, clown, surf coach, hospitality, building, all of it. The only times I was eating like an athlete was when I was working construction, working as a surf coach, or surf coach, PT, in construction, because you're constantly burning calories. It's probably, as a surf coach, I'm averaging, I think, 3,000 to 3,500 calories a day I need to sort of maintain and even slightly build a little bit of muscle. For me, if I again went on a normal diet, by the end of the summer season, I'm probably going to drop about 10 kilos. And not have much energy at all. I'm not a massive drinker. I've had my time in Nuki. I've served it, and it didn't help. Dehydration,
Does not.
fire hangover, and 4 lessons a day is not a good look. But it is a rite of passage. But when you're in that rip current, or even at the wave, when we were coaching there, okay, it's not a dangerous rip. You're not getting pulled out anywhere, but there's a lot of pressure that's constantly against your body. Now, after 2 knee operations, you probably remember I had a knee brace on at one point because my knee just blew up because that pressure, especially on the right hand, was constant on my cruciate ligament, and it flared up. Training, lots of good food, lots of training, and I managed to bring it back up, and eventually it's fine. So yeah, but you do need to look at an honest look at what your lifestyle is. So track your food, write everything down for your training, and do as much functional sort of multi-limb movements as possible, like the weightlifting and overhead press. And that, I would probably say, if you're going to ask me what 3 things to look at, that would be it. Training and track it, food and track it, and just be dead honest with what your lifestyle is. Once you can nail that, you're fine. So take coach's advice on board. Get one of them intolerance test, because if you know what's going to fuel you well, you have a better time. If I ate a load of mushrooms, it's not going to kill me. I'm not allergic, but I'm not going to feel good. My stomach's going to be feeling a bit funky. It's not going to provide me everything I need because my body's trying to fight that. My body's not focusing on improving. It's focusing on getting back to where it should be. It's fighting a toxin in the body.
Holding on for dear life.
Alcohol. Yeah, right. So, and again, that's why we have hangovers. That's all a hangover is. It's our body going, please don't do that again. I know you had an epic time, but please don't. Bodies don't like alcohol. It's quite simple. We do, but our bodies don't. So having to battle that, you want to give your body the best chance possible. So fuel it up the right way, smash out a good couple of litres of water a day. Make sure there's an electrolyte drink in there somewhere. I don't mean Lucozade. You can actually get tubs of electrolyte powder. Sure, there might be a little bit of sugar in there, but I would say with that one, the pros outweigh the cons. You're fully hydrated with one little scoop and you're good to go for the rest of the day.
Very good. And then I guess last little point to wrap up, because I know I said this would be a 30-minute chat, and as I thought we would, because we're both two people with lots of thoughts, lots of things to say. So we've ran over. That's all good. It's good. It will be split up, so we're not going to put people through an hour and a half of just us talking. This will be split into a few different, because otherwise I think people will lose their mind. Obviously we've discussed kind of the exercise side, we've discussed the nutrition side. Last little thing that I feel like people often overlook, and this isn't even necessarily at the performance level, but in general, kind of that, you know, like you've done your sports massage therapy and are continuing to progress through the levels with that. For the average surfer, would you say that's something that is, you know, overlooked? Do people, you know, is it something that's worth looking into for the average surfer? You know, that kind of taking care of yourself, exercise important, nutrition important. You know, those aches and pains, I don't know about you, I've seen myself sit out of a few weeks of surfing, you know, like maybe like trapped a muscle in the neck, you know, if you've taken a wrong wipe out, or, you know, like being hypermobile, like, you know, maybe I've jarred my shoulder, you know, like trying to pop up and it's sublocked slightly, you know, things like, you know, like Ollie Thresh, for example, did a lot of body work with us all back in Bristol, you know, like, and it's something that I feel like people almost feel like is exclusive, you know, I'm not a performance athlete, you know, I don't need a sports massage, it's a nice thing, but it's a treat, or it's something that only performing athletes need. Is it something that is worth, you know, the average surfer, if you want, like we say, that longevity, if you want to keep in the water, is that something that could be worth people looking into on the, you know, almost like a third tier of wellness for surfing?
100%, even from just the mental benefit of having a massage. Like, let's face it, if you're just busy, you got kids, you got pets, you got a lot on at work, whatever, it's a chance just to lay down. Like, in the middle of the day, just lay down and go, oh, bliss. Like, so from just that mental space there, you can nap for 20 minutes or an hour and a half, whatever it's going to be. In terms of physiological benefits, then yeah. So as an example, like I said, I had that ACL reconstruction and microfracture back in 2013. Jumped straight back into training, like I say, 8 times a week, doing strongman training. Tom didn't go easy by any means. I hit some really solid goals. All of that only took about 3 months, by the way. I was on a 12-week program, the 15% body fat, about 20 kilos in weight. It was good going. But through all that, so I had the op July 2013, and then at some point in the summer of 2015, I woke up and I was supposed to be doing a surf lesson for a surf school in Newquay, Quicksilver. And I woke up and something just went. I couldn't move. Spent about 10 minutes trying to just loosen things up. Not a chance. I was in absolute agony. So rolled over, texted the surf school manager and said, I'm really sorry. My back's gone. I mean, 2015, I was what, 30? And I felt 60. So said, really, really sorry, can't make it in. And I went to see a guy at a sports remedial clinic. And what happened was, and this got fixed through a few weeks of kinesiology and a bit of massage as well. But everything, because I had the operation on my right hand side, everything had compressed. So on my left side, because I'd overcompensated. Obviously, I couldn't weight bear for a couple of months on the right leg. So everything was happening on the left. Super common. But my body had adapted. So I then gone through all this training. I'm surfing a lot. So I was working there, had my op, done all the training, worked there till early 2015. Went back down to Cornwall. I was working in a bar for a while, doing a few PT sessions. I think at the time I was actually training Lucy Donlan and Harry Timpson. Then So I'm coaching, I'm training, I'm surfing, I'm being really active because it's Nuki. I quite often didn't bother owning a car down there, didn't need it. So I was walking or cycling everywhere. And like I say, suddenly I wake up, can't move my back. So my entire left side had basically contracted and sort of like contorted, which is what sent the back out. So the back wasn't actually the issue. It was everything down my left side, right from basically my calf all the way through to my lower back. And it had taken nearly 2 years for that sort of deferred pain and that issue to rear its head after
Wow.
the knee operation. So, and by having like sports massage and regular contact with a sports massage therapist or a physio, you not a GP, actually go seek out a physio because GPs aren't trained in this, by the way. You can then keep on top of things. Any little niggling aches, pains. I mean, for a lot of surfers, if we're surfing a lot and we're paddling, we're in a constant state of hyperextension in the back. So if you then don't really train, like if you look at an old school surfer at the moment, it's starting to change because training become a thing over the years, especially in other countries. But you look at like a 60, 70-year-old surfer that's still active now, massive chest, like the shoulder, the back. But if you actually stuck them on the side, it's going to be like my friend when he was training with the dumbbell press. The back's actually like that. Like they've actually
Yeah.
got lordosis, which isn't a cool thing to have. So having sports massage and training right will actually bring you back to where you should be. So your shoulders will be about here. You're upright. You got a good strong posture, and everything's working as it should. If you like anything, if you do too much of the same thing, your body's going to start adapting, and over years, your shoulders going to go back and back and back and back. Your back's going to extend. Same as those that work at a desk and don't do anything for their entire lives. They're actually the other way. So you get
I do.
the phone problem. So believe it or not, that will actually help balance your back out after surfing. So yeah, by all means, get your shots up on Instagram, but train at the same time. So yeah, I was 100%. I'm not saying you've got to have a sports massage every week. Feels great. Advise it, but you don't have to. But if you're surfing regularly, I'd probably say go on a monthly basis. If you know someone, great. If not, a lot of private studios will have a deal. So there's one around the corner from me. I think you pay, it's around 60 to £70 for a sports massage, 45 minutes
Not
to an
bad.
hour. Yeah, pretty competitive rate. Or if you go onto monthly direct debit, like a membership, then it drops like 50, 55. And then you get a little bit of discount if you have more. I think you get them at that rate, but obviously you got to have minimum one a month. But it
Yeah.
just keeps you in check. Again, that's 45 minutes to an hour a month is your time. You don't have to talk to your therapist about it. You can just lay there and accept the treatment and go, there's no kids, there's no boss, there's no nothing, no phone, and enjoy it. But you will certainly reap the benefits. It just keeps everything in check. If you cannot afford that, what I do recommend is one foam roller, which is soft tissue massage. Have a look at that. Anything that helps sort out your fascia. That can be one of the cylindrical foam rollers that you'll see for 10, 15 quid on Amazon, TK Maxx. And a good one for surfers is 2 tennis balls. You can get one, it's called the Peanut, or you just get 2 tennis balls, gaffer tape them together. I'll try and put a video up on my channel at some point of it. That sits either side of your spine, so along your extensor muscles, which is your rectus spinae. So again, those that you're extending all the time by paddling, that gets really tight in your thoracic. So if you're then struggling to sort of rotate, that's why your thoracic's probably going to be really tight. So that's really good for one for that. And the acupressure mats, or the biggest brand is called Shakti.
Yes.
Highly,
Yes.
highly recommend them. 20 minutes. I do it pretty much as part of a nighttime routine. I'll do 15, 20 minutes on them. I listen to something on Headway, get a little bit of knowledge in. I also use Insight Time for a bit of meditation just to unwind. And that's what I do before bed. Basically, what you're doing is like the bed of nails. All these spikes are sticking into your back if that's where you're using it. Increases the blood flow. So when you recarb in the evening after a day of surfing and you got all your proteins and minerals and blah, 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 that all gets distributed around your body through the blood. So increased blood flow into your back. You can use these Shakti mats. You can, if you're sadistic and you're brave enough, you can stand on them. Start off in socks. That'd be my advice.
Try
And
starting with stocks, and I could already feel it.
yeah, I won't really do that on the one I've got now. Over a few years, I've gone on to the Shakti Advanced, which is a bit more intense, and it still takes a minute to get used to that laying down on my back, let alone standing on it when I don't really have any fat on my feet. I don't know many people that do. Yeah, I can do, I think, 3 minutes, and I'm like, no, I'm off. But yeah, but in all seriousness, the acupressure mats are brilliant. They can actually roll up, but they fit inside your foam roller. So you can put that in your board bag, or if you go traveling, it's well worth it.
Good for van lifers as well.
Too.
Like if you're on the move. Yeah, very good. Well, thank you so much for that. I think we've covered, hopefully, a wide range of topics that will, I feel like we've covered a wide range of surfers. But yeah, thank you so much for your time, Ross. That was amazing. And obviously, yeah, if anyone listening, watching, however I distribute this, whatever capacity, has any more questions, then obviously you have got your business. So it's still under Surf Academy?
Yes, Surf Academy UK. I'm pretty much everywhere. Sorry. So you've got Instagram, TikTok, on LinkedIn and Facebook. You can find either Ross James on the LinkedIn and Facebook. I've also got Surf Academy UK, which if you have a look, you can just see that on the logo. That excuse the dog hairs. Yeah, Surf Academy UK is on all the platforms. The website, surfacademyuk.com, and you can email at hello@surfacademyuk.com.
Yeah, so if anyone listening does want that bespoke training, wants to get a bit more nitty gritty with it, then obviously this is your man.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, no, I do remote coaching, so you can, anywhere you've got internet signal, I can coach you. Whether that's for fitness training, surf coaching, or a blend of surf and fitness. Obviously, the massage isn't quite remote, but I am planning on doing an absolutely massive trip through Europe, Morocco, and then back through Europe. Thank you, Brexit. From this winter. So I will be working with some of the QS events and different surf camps and accommodations en route. So yeah, keep in touch, and if you see me anywhere, feel free to say hello.
Very good. Thank you. Stop the recording quickly.
Hi, I really hope you enjoyed that podcast. If you're interested in anything the guest has to say today, then please have a look in the description for their links. Please feel free to like, share and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next episode.